Mega Man finds himself in the ultimate crossover as the Mega Manniversary continues. I'm Joe, this is Same Name Different Game, and welcome back to the Mega Manniversary. Mega Man is not Capcom's best-selling franchise. In fact, Street Fighter, Resident Evil, Monster Hunter, and even Devil May Cry all have several titles in those series that have outsold Mega Man's best-selling title, Mega Man 2. Still, Mega Man has become something of a de facto mascot for the company, overshadowing the official mascot, one Captain Commando. And this, no doubt, is because of his ubiquity. As I've said before, he is one of the most prolific characters on Capcom's roster, having produced more games than any of those other series I just mentioned. And this being the case, it is only natural that he would find himself in crossovers and mashups aplenty. So hey, let's get started with a little history about those crossovers. Capcom established an identity fairly early on, and as a result, many of their characters passed through different game titles. Super Joe Gibson was their first example of this, showing up as the protagonist of Commando and its sequel Mercs, but then also showing up in The Speed Rumbler and Bionic Commando. As Capcom created more and more successful titles, the crossovers grew. Mike Hager, one of the heroes of Final Fight, showed up in Capcom's wrestling extravaganza, Saturday Night Slam Masters. Then Guy, another of Final Fight's protagonists, showed up in Street Fighter Alpha alongside his Mad Gear rival, Sodom. And the Final Fight Street Fighter crossovers have only grown from there. In 1997's Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo, the Street Fighter, Darkstalkers, and Cyberbots worlds all collided. The 90s also saw Capcom start to cross over with characters from other media and other game publishers. This began in 1994 with the release of X-Men: Children of the Atom in arcades. While the game is ostensibly just an X-Men title, Akuma from Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo is a hidden character, thus beginning a long and fruitful line of X-Men and Capcom crossovers. The crossovers began in earnest in 1996 with the release of X-Men vs. Street Fighter, a game that pitted Marvel's famous mutants up against what was Capcom's most popular franchise of the day. This game also introduced a tag feature, allowing players to choose two characters and swap between them at any time. 1997 saw a follow-up in the form of Marvel Superheroes vs. Street Fighter, and 1998 saw the arcade release of the game we are talking about today, Marvel vs. Capcom, Clash of Superheroes, galvanizing the series that continues this very month with Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. So where does Mega Man fit into all of this? Well, like I said, he's kind of Capcom's de facto mascot, and you'll notice that the Street Fighter name is gone from this game. It's a crossover within a crossover. Characters from Capcom franchises of all stripes show up to fight. Mega Man makes his fighting game debut here alongside Strider Hiru, and official Capcom mascot, Captain Commando. The rest of the Capcom side is made up of Ryu, Chun-Li, and Zangief from Street Fighter, Morrigan from Darkstalkers, and Jin from Cyberbots, seen for the first time fighting outside his mech. On the Marvel side, it's mostly characters seen in earlier games: Spider-Man, Gambit, Hulk, Captain America, and Wolverine. War Machine technically makes his debut here, but he's basically a palette swap of Iron Man. The only truly new character on the Marvel side is Venom. But wait, there's more, especially as it pertains to Mega Man. See, there are some hidden characters here, and while the vast majority are reskins of existing characters like an Orange Hulk and Metal Zangief, Mega Man's Robo-Sister Roll also shows up, playing similarly though not exactly like her brother. Also, as is the tradition with these games, the final boss is a hulking behemoth of a villain. In this case, the bizarre merging of Professor X and Magneto, Onslaught. Finally, this game contains assist characters, the only time in the series this happens. There's a separate set of Marvel and Capcom characters that can be summoned to do just an assist attack, and they can only be used a limited number of times. These range from the famous, with characters like X-Men villain Juggernaut and Arthur from Ghosts and Goblins, to more obscure, like Captain America's second-string replacement US Agent, and Tom Poo, a boss from the original Strider arcade game. 1998 saw the beginning of the sixth generation of gaming with the release of the Sega Dreamcast in Japan. Previously, Capcom's fighting games had seen their definitive ports come to the Sega Saturn, so you had to know that the Dreamcast would play host to an awesome port of Marvel vs. Capcom. And that is exactly what happened in 1999. On March 25th in Japan and October 7th here in North America, it's our first game for this episode, Marvel vs. Capcom Clash of Superheroes on the Dreamcast. Marvel vs. Capcom on the Dreamcast is arcade perfect, near as I can tell. It makes sense, seeing as the Dreamcast hardware is more powerful than the CPS2 board the arcade game ran on, which by this time was already 6 years old, having debuted with 1993's Super Street Fighter II. The entire roster, including hidden characters, is present. Everything works like it should, the endings are all here, and so on. The load times are pretty minimal, every character's animations are intact. It's a very impressive port. The game itself plays like most Capcom classic fighters, with 3 punches and 3 kicks. Pressing strong punch and strong kick at the same time tags in your partner. Pressing the mediums together brings in your assist character. You can also do a crossover attack by doing quarter circle forward and both strong attacks. And in a unique twist to this installment, you can do quarter circle back and both strongs to get both of your characters on screen for a limited time to double team your opponent, and the game doesn't slow down a single frame that I noticed when using this. The Dreamcast port also adds one thing that no other version of this game, nor any other entry in the entire series has, the Cross Fever mode. This is a 4-player mode that allows each player to choose a character, and then the 2 teams have 1 player controlling each member. I don't know why no other game did this, but it's pretty sweet if you have 3 friends to play with. Is it just me, or would that be a totally awesome addition to EVO? Have they done that at EVO before? Well, at any rate, in spite of the existence of a perfect port on the Dreamcast, the Sony PlayStation had a larger install base, so you know what that means. Our second game this month, released in November of 1999 in Japan and January of 2000 here in North America, is Marvel vs. Capcom Clash of Superheroes on the Sony PlayStation. Capcom made a ton of games for the PS1, including ports of a lot of their arcade fighting games, but the system was made first and foremost for 3D graphics, and while there are some wonderful 2D games on the PS1, the system wasn't great with it. As a result, most fighting fanatics will tell you that the Saturn versions of Capcom's fighters are the preferred home ports, like I said earlier. The Saturn's 4MB RAM cart upped the system's ability to handle games with numerous 2D sprites, and as a result, these Capcom fighters are much more faithful to their arcade counterparts. Now consider for a moment how much more powerful the Dreamcast is than the Saturn. So the ports of earlier games on Sony's system were already weak when compared with the system from the same generation. How do you suppose this one fares? Well, I'll just out with it. Poorly. Capcom put the two prior Capcom Versus games on the PlayStation, and neither of them supported the tag feature, so you can probably guess that it's the same here. That's right, a game whose main gimmick is a tag battle is stripped of that feature. Well, mostly. In place of the Dreamcast version's Cross Fever mode, this one has Crossover mode. I guess this is some kind of attempt at a mea culpa for leaving out true tag play. It allows each player to pick a character, and then you play a tag fight with each player using the same team. Your character and the one your opponent picked. There's also a side effect to this in the main game. Now you choose if you want one of the normal support characters, or you can take a main roster member as a support character. And while I give them kudos for getting the entire roster, including hidden characters, into this version, that matters less when you consider that the game is missing frames of animation and background elements on top of the tag feature. This game also features a really obnoxious zoom effect called Dynamic Mode, which I guess is supposed to make the game more, well, dynamic. I don't know, but it causes this to happen when doing air combos or throws. Ugh. The game also adds a beginner option to the easy or manual mode select before you choose your fighters, just in case easy mode didn't make it easy enough. Look, I'm all for accessibility, but this hardly qualifies as a selling point. Finally, in contrast to the Dreamcast version, the load times here are atrocious. Though, once again, I do have to give the team some begrudging kudos for allowing you to skip all the stuff between fights by pressing start right when a fight ends. This will load up the next fight in line directly without having to go through win quotes, watching the computer select their team, and all of that. Still, this shouldn't have been necessary, and those load times are entirely too long, even with this feature. This is, by any standard, a poor port. Look, I understand Capcom's desire to cash in on Sony's larger install base, but why not just wait until later the same year and put the game out on the PlayStation 2? Anyways, this is part of a Mega Man event, is it not? So let's talk specifically about Mega Man in Marvel vs. Capcom. Mega Man's fighting game debut didn't see him getting the best treatment. He's considered mid-tier by experts, but since I'm not a serious player, I still think he's kind of fun to play. His gimmick is that he has 3 of his weapons: the Leaf Shield from Mega Man 2, because fan service, the Tornado Hold and Rock Ball from Mega Man 8, because it was the most recent at the time. Look, the Rock Ball sucked in Mega Man 8, and it sucks here, but the other 2 weapons aren't bad. You use them with a quarter circle forward and punch. You switch with a quarter circle forward and kick. This causes Flip Top to bring the Leaf Shield using a strong kick. Medium Kick has him bring the Tornado Hold, and Weak Kick, fittingly, the Rock Ball. Rush is by his side, as is Beat the Bird, and both provide hyper combos as well. In this game, each character has a song, and Mega Man's is a very decent arrangement of the Mega Man 2 title theme. And when he wins, he's the only character to get a special win jingle. Mega Man also gets his own stage, with Dr. Wily running around in the background and a ton of references to his history. His ending mimics his own games, showing him get Onslaught's magnetic shockwave attack. And in one thing I have to give the PS1 version serious props for: once you beat the game with him, you can use the magnetic shockwave as one of Mega Man's hyper combos, but only in that version. Now what about audio and video? Well, let's do like we always do and take a look and a listen to these side by side.
Ready. Fight! Level 2!
Audio-wise, things are pretty much identical, and if you were to look at a freeze frame, visually they're very similar, but seeing the game in motion, Dreamcast looks much better. And that makes it time to give the edge. And even without the ability to use the magnetic shockwave as Mega Man, the Dreamcast version absolutely, positively walks away with it. I mean, the PlayStation version takes out the tag feature, leaving the game as a shell of itself, to say nothing of the missing frames of animation or lost background elements. And the real kicker is that both of these games cost about the same amount in the aftermarket. For some reason, these flawed PS1 ports are considered some sort of weird collector's item. So at $50, I would definitely say that's a little steep no matter what, but the Dreamcast version is absolutely worth it if you're a fighting game fanatic, although you could always just boot the game up in MAME. Because unfortunately, the game was available a lot cheaper as part of the Marvel vs. Capcom Origins collection, bundled with Marvel Superheroes, but that collection has since been delisted on all digital storefronts. Now normally, that would be it. But hey, Mega Man has had a continuing history as an ensemble player and a guest star since then. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of that history. After his debut here, he continued in one form or another to grace Capcom crossover fighting games. The Mega Man of Mega Man Legends showed up in Tatsunoko vs. Capcom. Mega Man X is a marquee player in Marvel vs. Capcom Infinity, with the main antagonist being Sigma, merged with Ultron. Zero of the Mega Man X series appears in multiple Capcom fighting games. Even bad box art Mega Man showed up in Street Fighter Cross Tekken. And his latest, and probably most notable appearance of the last several years, was in the most recent Smash Brothers, alongside other classic non-Nintendo game characters like Pac-Man and Sonic. Even when he's not getting new games all his own, Mega Man can be counted on to show up for a fight. And hey, that does it. Thank you so much for watching, and Roger the Retro Gaming Puppet will be back before the end of this month with another obscure old games installment of the Mega Manniversary. But then we're going to take a pause on celebrating the Blue Bomber for a little while, because hey, October is coming. It's my favorite time of year. We're going to be bringing you some spooky Halloween episodes. See you then.
Good. Level 1. KO. Mega Man wins.